So for tail section 5, we're going to start out by covering the inside of this with this circle here. And I had a piece of this orange paper from the 6x6 pad that's about 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, and I backed it with some score tape, and then I just put my 3-inch circle die on it just to kind of round off those corners. And now I'm going to make a light pencil mark at with my circle template to mark that 2 1/4 center circle. So I'll just take my template and get it kind of centered on there and draw a light pencil line. And then I'll make a series of snips that are about 3/16 inch apart on the right up to that line there. I'm just kind of pointing my scissors at the imaginary center there. Now that I have all my slits made, I'll go ahead and erase my line. And then I'm just going to bend up at the end of these slits. So I removed a little bit of my score tape backing, and I'm just going to get that centered so that I can feel that that edge there and know that it's coming up around the edge. And then I'll just go and adhere that part of this where I took the backing off, and then I can just pick the other part up, remove the rest of the backing, and adhere that down. And as I put this down, I'm just using my bone folders so I get a good outline of that circle down there. So this blue paper is what I'm going to use on the inside of my tail, and I'm going to put my template that I used for the chipboard down here so that I have about at least 3/8 of an inch around it. And I'm not going to cut on this template, I just want to use it to get a rough idea of how much paper I need. So I'm just going to kind of cut around it, leaving about 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch past those points. Now this inside circle is just a little bit more than 3 inches, so I just want to try to find the center here. So I'm just putting my ruler down and coming across and making a line in the center going this way. I'll use a pen so that you can see it better. And then I'll come this way, and this doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just trying to get something that would be close to being in the middle, and that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to set my compass to this R1 setting, which is 1 9/16, which is a 1/16 of an inch more than 1.5 inches. And I'll remove this template now that I've got that center point, and I'm just going to draw a complete circle. And I know this will be hard to see on the camera, but just take my word for it that I'm drawing that complete circle. And then I'll draw a line that comes from that circle just out to, from the center point just out to one of the, just out. And then I'll go ahead and put score tape on the back of this. Now that I have the back covered with score tape, I'm going to cut in on that line we drew out from the center and then cut carefully around the circle. Now I've got this, and I know that we've got some excess here, so I want to just do a dry fit and cut off some of that excess. So I'll put this in, and we're going to just line up that circle that we just cut, lines up with the circle in the bottom here. And it doesn't have to be exact, we'll just cut off excess over here so that we know that we won't run short. So in order to get started and to stay straight, I'm going to start by lining up with this seam here. And I can see it here on the inside. I've just taken my thumbnail to it. And now I've got a place to put that straight edge that we cut to begin with. I can line that up right along that crease, and I know I'm going to get started correctly. And you can see I put a little ink on there as well. So I've just got that first little 1/4 inch started, and now I'll just start working my way around, making sure I'm in contact with the whole piece of the tail there. So what I'm doing is just putting down about 1/4 inch at a time on the inside, and then coming back and checking it on the rest of it. Now I'm about to this point here, and I still have my backing on, so now I can mark a point where the paper ends in the inside and on the outside and cut a line. But if you're more comfortable, go ahead and let it overlap, because it'll be fine, and that way you don't have to worry about, are you going to get a good seam. Now, no matter if you're going to have a butted seam or an overlap, you'll want to hit that edge with a little of your marker just so no white paper will show. And then go ahead and finish sticking it down. Now once you've got it adhered, go ahead and burnish. Now be careful not to burnish too close to the edge, because we still have exposed score tape there. Now we can trim off this excess, and first I'm going to just trim in a circle so that I'm closer to these points all the way around, so I don't have so much excess. And once I've trimmed that excess, what I'll do is I'll just cut some from one side and then turn it around and cut from the other side right along that piece of chipboard. And that way you can get a nice cut along each one of those edges. So I'll do that for all of my curves. And you might find it easier to just kind of press down to flatten it out a little bit as you go. Once you get all the way around, go ahead and give these edges a really good burnish. So after you've burnished, if you have any edges that are a little rough, with a super sharp craft knife you can come and get after them a little bit. Now once you're satisfied with how you have your paper on here, we can get ready to attach it to the other sections of the tail. Now before we attach our last section to this part that we already have, I have planned it so that the tail kind of flips up. I think you can see how it's kind of curving up here. And so to do that, you probably want to have a line that kind of indicates center bottom. Now on the template for the odd shaped piece, there's a red line, and if you fold your template on that line and then match that up with the cut on that piece, that is a good starting point for center bottom. Now you can take a look at it and see, does that suit you, or do you want to move it a little bit? But that to me is a good indication of where the center bottom will be. And the reason we care about that is there's a seam in this paper here that I'd like that to go towards center bottom. So when I put that tail piece on, I will put it on so that it lines up with this line I just made. So in order to put the tail piece on, we'll again make some slits. We just need to make slits, not cut wedges, and we'll cut them in between where we made the other ones, and we'll stay a 1/16 of an inch away from the fold line. So I've made all my slits and I've folded them down out of the way. I have what I've marked for bottom facing towards me here, and I'll just put some glue around on here. And then when I pick up this piece, I'll line up that tail with the bottom here and get that put in and centered there. And then I can attach all my little tabs. So now we can start covering the outside of our tail, and I'm going to start with the last section here, and I'll mark center on this piece of paper that came from the 6x6 pad, so I'll make a mark at 3 inches and 3 inches, and then I'll set my compass to 1 5/8 and draw a circle there, and then I'll draw a line out from center. I'll cover the back of this paper with score tape, and then I'll cut in on that line and around in the circle just like we did when we did the inside of that last section. Now I've gone ahead and finished cutting, and I inked this inside circle, and when I start this one, I'm going to start my slit in between, kind of to the left of where the original cut is in the chipboard, and in between this, in the center of this curve here, so that it's going to come like so, and then curve around. Now this one I think is a little bit easier to do than the inside one. So I'm just going to start and keep an eye on my center seam there. Yeah, I can bring it, just a tad off if you want to see the blue, and if you don't want to see the blue, it may be difficult to not see blue in some of these as we go along. So I think I'll make a decision that I will see a little blue and just let it go for that. So I'll just do my procedure that I did before, work about 1/4 inch at a time, doing the center and then checking the outside here. Now when you get near the end over here again, leave this score tape backing on and mark, and you can either have it do a butt joint like I'm doing here, or you can do an overlap if you're more comfortable with that. Either way, of course, hit the end with your marker. If you come on the edge of your table, you'll be able to burnish this down. And then we'll trim this off like we did before by first trimming even along the edges from point to point, and then cutting out on the insides there. Then once everything is trimmed and burnished, you can go ahead and ink both the inside and the outside of that edge. So as we work our way forward, we can use the templates that we used for the chipboard as a starting point for the decorative paper. And here are the papers I've chosen for sections 4, 3, and 2. And for example, here's section 4. And when we fit it around here, the width looks good, but it's going to be a little bit short. It's about 3/8 of an inch short or so. So I think I'll just take this template, and when I put it down here on this paper, I'll just continue this curve for about 1/2 inch or so, so that allows me plenty of room to change and adjust if I need to. So I'll go ahead and I'm just going to do one section at a time. So here I'm going to cut out section 4, and then I'll be back for installation. So to extend sections 2 and 4, which are just simple arcs, I've drawn around the template on the reverse side, and I've made a couple of tick marks at this end to indicate where the end is, and then I can just shift the whole template down and continue drawing around that, and that way I get that curve elongated. So once you have your shape cut out, go ahead and put some temporary adhesive on it, and we'll start it with the line that we drew that indicates center bottom, and I'm just trying to center it in this section between the two folds here. Now I'm going to see a little bit of blue, and if I'm not seeing the amount that I want, I'm going to just draw a pencil line on here so that I can fine-tune this a little bit to get exactly the shape I want, or the blue reveal that I want. So you can see it's coming along really nicely on this edge, and I just need to trim off, I think, a little bit on the inside edge. But that's a personal preference, so do it how you want to have it. So I'm going to fine-tune this one, and then I'll be back. Then once you have the piece to the shape you want, go ahead and ink the edges, and then for this light piece I just used a scattered straw marker on each of the ends, and I'm just going to let it overlap just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and install this piece on section number 4. For section number 3, we'll again try out our template, but we know that this center line here is all the way back at this point. So what I'm going to do is just cut this off at the center line, and then take this piece. So really when this comes around, it hooks on to here. I'm just going to attach this piece onto there so that our template now has an edge that is at the center line that we want to use. So I'll just get a piece of Scotch tape and join that together. So now I've made that join with my Scotch tape, and I'm just going to line up that edge with the edge that we have there. You may need to move it down a little to get the best fit. And this piece is probably the one that'll take some finessing, because we can't just we may be able to just lengthen it, but we may need to change it as well. But here for me, it's looking pretty good. I think I could just extend it, I think, by a ½ inch, and then we'll probably have to do a little trimming. But my reveal looks pretty good all the way around here. If you don't have enough, you'll want to extend it, but I think this will work. So I'll just extend it again by a ½ inch, and I'll use this as a template. What we could do is just extend both sides by a ¼ inch. That's probably a better way to go. So I hope you can see here what I've done. I've just extended both ends by a ¼ inch, and then I'll cut just on the inside of my lines like we do for all of our template cutting. And now that I have my piece cut out, I'll put it on here with some temporary adhesive and see if any fine tuning is necessary. Now once you've done any fine tuning that you want to do, go ahead and ink the edges, put score tape on the back, and then in this case I used my Ripe Persimmon marker on my 2 edges to cover up the white. So I'll just go ahead and get this piece installed now. So now I have this section covered, and I'm ready to go on to section 2. So now that I have the third piece installed, I'm ready to try my template out for section number 2, and I'll start fitting that around there. And for whatever reason, when I'm a couple inches from the end, I'm not fitting on here anymore. Now this may just be unique to me, but it may be that I didn't glue these pieces together quite straight or something, but I can see that if I take the bottom here and just curve it around, it'll be fine. But I need to like take a little pleat right there in order for everything to be good. So I'm just kind of making that little pleat there, and I can take a piece of tape and put that on there. Then of course I'll smooth out this bump down here, and I'll add a little bit there. And then I need to add, I think I'll add 3/4 of an inch to this one and see what happens. So that's how to take care of something if it's not quite smoothly going around, because you want it to fit smoothly on there. So now I'll take care of this little bump down here, make that a smooth curve, and then I'll just smooth it on the top there. And this is the paper that I've chosen to cut this one out of. And so because I want to extend this by about 3/4 of an inch, I've made those same 2 tick marks like I did when we were working on section 4. And then I could just pick this up and move this down till that end is right there. And then I can trace it around. And now I've extended my piece by 3/4 of an inch. And I also filled in that little part there. So I'll go ahead and get that cut out. And now that I have my piece cut out, I can put some temporary adhesive on it and try it out and see if we need any fine tuning. So again, after fine tuning, I inked the edges, and I hit the ends just with my scattered straw marker, and now I'm ready to put this in place, lining up the bottom edge here with the seam. And then to finish off on section number 1, I'm just going to use this orange border here, and I want to leave a little bit of blue showing on both sides. So I think I'm just measuring it in several places here. I think I'll cut a 1/16 less than a half an inch, so that would be 7/16 inch wide, and I'll just center that 7/16 on this orange strut border that we have right here. So now I've just wrapped it around here, and I'm just going to cut it so I only have a little bit of a overlap there, and then I'll ink it, put some score tape on it, and install that on that last section. And there's the final piece of decorative paper on the tail. I thought it would be fun to have something that looks like a propeller coming out of the end of the tail, and I decided to cut this gear out of medium weight chipboard. I just first attached some of the yellow polka dot paper from the 6x6 pad, and I cut out the medium-sized gear from this Tim Holtz die, which is Gadget Gears number 2. And then I want to raise it up in here a little bit, and so to do that I've cut out of medium weight chipboard 6 circles that are 5/8 inch in diameter. Now I happen to have this Circles number 4 die from Sizzix, and it has a 5/8 inch circle on there, so I was able to cut that out with that. It doesn't matter if there's a hole in it, so if you have one of the dies that makes tags with a reinforcement, you could cut that reinforcement out of medium weight chipboard. You want to make a stack that's about 5/8 of an inch wide, that's about 3/8 inch tall. That's our goal there. And I've just got some paper that I'm going to wrap around that stack once I glue it together. And this is just a little decorative element from the chipboard pieces to go on the middle here. If you don't have the chipboard pieces, you could just cut something out of the paper line and put that in the middle there, or put anything you'd like in the middle. So I'm going to start by gluing up these 6 little circles into a stack. So I have my little cylinder of chipboard discs glued up here, and I've cut a piece of paper here that's about 2.5 inches long by 3/8 inch wide, and that I'll just wrap that around the edge and overlap the edges to finish off this little stack. And I don't think I said that I inked with my blue marker around the edges of this gear, and then of course I inked it with my distress ink as well. So now I've got my paper covered cylinder here, and I can just flip over the gear to the other side and center this little stack in the middle there. We'll let that set up for a minute. And then we'll put some glue in the center, and if you have a preference which way is up, remember we've got our seam down here, and just get that centered right in the middle of the end of the tail. And then I inked the edges on this little chipboard element, and I'll just glue it right here in the center. So now we're ready to install our tail onto the end panel here. I'm going to hold it down about 5/8 of an inch from the top, and then center it left to right this way. And I'll use some good glue coverage on this bottom to put that on, and hold it with some pressure. Now I'll hold it with some pressure for a couple of minutes, and then we can let go, but I'm going to let it sit and dry and cure overnight before I put it onto the fish, because when we go to take the back panel off and on, we will be pulling on it with this tail, and we want to make sure that that glue is not only set up but that it's cured, and overnight is the best plan for that.